Everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Delete This podcast. And also, Happy New Year's to everybody. Actually, Happy New Year's Eve to everybody who is celebrating. For today's episode, we are going to be re examining the Minnesota daycare scam because we have finally heard back from one of the owners, or I guess a son of one of the owners. And we're also going to be talking about Sam Altman. That guy has a very dark past. And let me tell you what, OpenAI, how it started as a nonprofit, was all a master manipulation, in my opinion, by Sam Altman and venture capital. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode. Like I said, if you're interested in keeping up with us and staying updated, please connect with us on our social medias. We share clips, updates, and different things there. So please join us there. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. All right, you guys, we are back to talk about the Minnesota daycare scam. If you guys cannot recall from yesterday's episode or just from the news, we looked at a little excerpt from that documentary by Nick Shirley. Nick is an independent journalist. He does a lot of YouTube content doing independent journalism. I've noted also that it does seem as though his politics is more like right-leaning, which we're going to get into a little bit about kind of like the origin of like the Somali daycare scam, and kind of like what is being how it's being pushed by the Trump administration. So basically, a little recap on this Minnesota daycare scam. So basically, Nick Shirley had put out a YouTube video where he did a full investigation on these daycares that arose. I initially said in my previous video that they arose from COVID, but it seems as though they were actually daycares that existed before COVID even started. And then they continued on with their funding from the government throughout COVID. And then after COVID, when none of the kids ended up returning, or so it seems from this Somali daycare scam that is going on by YouTube, that YouTube video that Nick Shirley had put out. And there is a lot of controversy regarding this video. Like I said, it does seem as though it is more of like a right-wing talking point, but it is important that we are always cognizant of the fact that this is fraud that is happening in our cities and our countries, and it should be a problem no matter who is behind it. So I just want to put that out there as like an initial statement. But like I was sharing you guys in the intro, we finally heard back from somebody who is part of the Somali, one of these daycares, and this is from the Quality Learning Center. If you guys remember, the Quality Learning Center is the one that had their sign as the Learing Center, which you can pretty much just search this term up directly, the Learing Center, and then put Minnesota behind it, and you will get tons of content. But you can see from this photo that they are now updating their sign to include the N for the Learning Center. So if we could show that one more time. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, so apparently according to the daycare owner, the owner had owned this daycare for 8 years, and they said that they were running it for the past 8 years, like the entire time. And I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. So I was like, so you guys were operational during COVID? Maybe he didn't mean to necessarily say that, but I was like, that was a pretty big chunk of time when everybody was home. And I don't think that anybody was doing daycare for maybe a year or two. And trust me, I used to live with my family, with my nieces and nephews. I knew that the freaking kids were home, okay? So these kids, I'm sure, were not attending the daycare from at least 2020 to 2021 at the very least. But anyway, so this guy is finally talking to the press. And the funny thing about this is that it's like, it's better that you actually do not talk to the press when something like this is going on, because it does not work in your favor. But let's go ahead and look at what the son of the Quality Learning Center, or Learning Center, said.
You can see we're open Mondays through Thursdays, 2 to 10 p.m. He was here earlier. I don't see him right now. So it's like, are you trying to record that we're doing fraud, or are you trying to put the Somali name and the fraud in the same sentence? That's what really hurt us the last couple of days. We're open. We've been open. We haven't closed. We've been open for eight and a half years now. We haven't closed once during that period. So I want to touch on that first. The second thing is, which is kind of laughable, is the sign. We messed up the sign. We paid somebody to do our sign. He incorrectly did it. We're having him work on it. We paid him to correct the sign. He said it'll be done by this week. So by the end of this week, our sign will be fine. The third thing, which is the fraud claim. There's no fraud going on whatsoever. Kids come to us, clients come to us, their parents come to us. They're here daily. They leave on time. They come on time. There's no fraud going on whatsoever. Where those claims came from, I mean, if a group of people does fraud, you don't paint the brush with everyone in that group. You don't say, hey, there's a group of people that are Somali that are doing fraud. Say, hey, every single Somali must be part of fraud. No, we're business owners. Being a business owner is extremely tough. Trying to raise kids that are not yours, that are others, is extremely tough as well.
I think that he is trying to convince us more than he is convincing himself. He said, hey guys, trying to raise some kids, it is a hard job, and we are doing it from 2 to 10 p.m. Don't forget that that is our hours. But he basically had called out Nick Shirley and was saying that, like, why wasn't Nick Shirley visiting during their off hours? And I just want to say that it is very possible that this is true. So I don't want us to just put a broad stroke, like he said, towards the entire Somali community, because it is very possible that there are Somalis that just run daycares and the daycares are operational and like there's actually kids going to those. But it is also very possible and very likely that there is actually a giant fraud operation being run here. Like you guys saw in yesterday's video with, or like we could see from that Nick Shirley video, was that Nick Shirley, he was visiting an entire, like, a building where every single door to door was a different learning center, an autism center, and nobody was home, nobody was there. And then when people saw him there, they acted very aggressively towards him, like, what are you doing here in this building? Like, he was not meant to be in that building. Now, does that, just common sense wise, does that sound to you like there is no fraud going on, everything is running as normal here in Minnesota? No, it does not sound like that. It can't be possible that all of these businesses are not in operation. But I will say this, that the important thing is always that these kinds of things get investigated all the way until the end. Like I was mentioning with Ilhan Omar and her investment with her husband, those things should be invested all the way to the end. Same thing with any other politician that is partially gaining some kind of revenue from their investments or from policies that are being run in their local, I guess, jurisdiction. But like I was saying earlier, that it does seem as though this is kind of a greater effort by the Trump administration to crack down on the Somali population in the US. I was saying that actually, so yesterday I said that there was already 79 arrests and 78 of those were Somali. But what I found from additional information was that this has actually been kind of like a this has been like kind of a multi-step process in rooting out or like looking into this fraud. So there has definitely been arrests. There has definitely been arrests in the situation, but it looks as though has been a total of 92 of those, and 82 of those are currently Somali Americans. So we will just have to see what happens at the end of really this kind of trial period regarding this crackdown. But it looks like it's being looked at. And the other important thing to mention is that these kinds of programs are not just running in a vacuum. Okay, there are people who are approving it. And again, this is happening at a state level, at a federal level, that people are approving these programs or these services that are being run. And it is not just happening in Minnesota. I want us to be very clear about that, because like I said, there is also this issue happening rampant in the US and California, specifically with the homeless population, all the services that are meant to help the homeless. But as we know, for everyone that lives in LA, most of these people are kind of on something, so they don't they don't necessarily want to be helped. But there are those programs, and that's an issue because in the US, you cannot mandate somebody, even though they are using drugs, you cannot mandate them to attend a program, to live somewhere, because they're adults. So a lot of those programs don't function well because there is a substance issue, and it's hard to break out of that. I don't it's you cannot have an easy bandage on these things, but we can also root out evil or root out corruption that is happening within our government, because as taxpayers we should be getting we should be getting answers to these kinds of questions. But funny enough, no, not funny enough, actually, another situation transpired with another daycare center actually in Minnesota. And this daycare center was called the Nakamis Daycare Center. And this was led by Nasrulah Mohamed. and he gave a press conference basically talking about a vandalism that happened in their daycare center and what was stolen. I want you to pay attention very clearly to what was stolen. Let's go ahead and play that video.
The suspect came in from the back, broke in from the back kitchen, and he also destroyed the wall to come in. As he came in, he broke a door from the wall from Family Dollar from the side. He couldn't, unfortunately, we don't know if that he went in or not, but we saw that it was damaged. As we walked around the daycare, we saw that our office doors was broken into as well. We saw that, unfortunately, there was important documentation, enrollment of the children, and also employee documentation that was gone. There were also checkbooks that were ripped from our check papers that were ripped from our book. This is devastating news, and we don't know why this is targeting our Somali community, as one video made by a specific individual made this all happen.
Before I get into this, I just want to point out the sign that the woman's holding behind. She says, "Racism has no place in childcare." I agree with her, but this is not racism, white woman, okay? I hope that, I mean, I'm not trying to dox her or anything or put her out there, but I'm just like, girl, do you not see what's going on here? Okay, did you not, even if you are not in agreement with the Republican right-wing talking points about the Somalis are the ones that are like stealing money, it doesn't matter. You should be able to identify when there is fraud, when there's misuse of funds happening right in front of your eyes. Like, because somebody is claiming racism, that does not mean that it is racism, okay? You cannot just siphon off the $1 billion a year and then claim racism when someone comes knocking on your door trying to collect that money back, okay? But anyways, so importantly enough, what this guy mentioned was that there were documents that were stolen regarding employment and also the kids, and then they stole a little group. I guess they stole some checks out of a checkbooks. So one, okay, the documents that were very conveniently taken regarding the childcare and the employment history that was broken into, and then the checkbooks that could be easily canceled. Very, very interesting. Now, I'm hopeful that if this actually is a true event, of course, 1000%, I hope that they are able to actually find who did this. Nobody should be vandalized. Nobody should be retaliated against due to a video, 100%. But it just seems as if the timing is very, very, very convenient for this group, at least to just draw attention away from what is currently going on with these organizations, and also maybe to clear, like, Nakami's daycare center, for them to clear up their own tracks. Like, hey, if you come asking for like employment information, who's working here, what kids there are here, what services, sorry, somebody just burglarized us like yesterday, so we cannot hand that over to you guys. It's a little bit odd. And there was this New York Post article that came out where this video was shared initially, and as part of a quote from this article, basically the police said that the Nakamis Daycare Center actually did not report any losses initially to the officials. So when the officials showed up for that 911 call, they didn't report any losses because maybe they didn't, and maybe at the time they didn't see, hey, this stuff was taken, even though those were like the three main things. But they did say that there was like a wall that was broken and a door that was broken as well. So again, it's very possible, but it just smells a little bit funny, okay, that there was no initial reporting of any of these losses. But apparently after this video, or after this press conference, it seems as though they then went back and updated that reporting. So I guess there are some things regarding this, okay? And it seems as though to me like this is a very tight knit community. So I just want us to be able to say that, like, we cannot guarantee that all the Somalis are behind this, but it is a tight knit community. So this is why you might see a fraud like this be able to be perpetrated throughout an entire community. Because like I said, if somebody was in the know about it after 2020, after COVID, then they might let like their community members also know about these scams. I did see a video that was in Ohio when somebody was approaching one of like the daycares there, and I guess like she did not want to open the door either, and he was like, "Oh, I want to put my kid in something." So I wouldn't necessarily recommend for people to be approaching like their local Somali daycare center, but it just needs to be looked into. And the funny thing is, always with these kinds of things, is like, where's the New York Times? Where is the Guardian? Where are these like journalists that supposedly are supposed to be doing these groundbreaking stories, going to the scene of things? Like, this is the kind of journalism that needs to happen on a daily basis, not people just submitting you stories about like new celebrity gossip or stories that they just want you to be perpetrating in the media. Okay, you're supposed to be actually reporting, okay, journalists, not just taking stories and then regurgitating that information. But it's really unfortunate because it does seem as though Nick Shirley has been receiving some death threats because of this
So
documentary
Ilhan
that
Omar,
went
nobody from
out.
the camp has reached out to you.
And unfortunately, it's like this guy truly, I mean, for whatever reason, whatever background, I don't even know fully his politics. Like I said, I was just looking through his YouTube. For whatever reason, he should not be attacked for exposing something like this. And I think it says more about the people that are attacking and threatening somebody like Nick Shirley for exposing fraud in their country than it does about Nick Shirley. But we have that clip. Let's go ahead and play that, see what Nick says.
So Ilhan Omar, nobody from the camp has reached out to you at all.
No.
Have you gotten any threats, like actual death threats?
Yeah, well, in person and also.
Can you tell me
online.
about that? Like, are they messaging you saying, we're going to get you? What are they saying to you?
Yeah, like they're saying, oh, like, kirked. You're going to be kirked.
You're going to be kirked. That's what they're saying to you.
Yeah, like you're the next, you'll be the next Kirk. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Because it's not even, like, I hate what's happening right now. Like, I feel bad for my family, honestly, because it's like, yeah, like, we didn't do anything wrong. And yet you guys are coming after me like I'm some sort of villain.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, honestly, and I'm just very curious as to what the government is going to do regarding basically the documentary and all of the different cases. But I don't know. I don't really trust Tim Waltz. I don't think we have a reason to. I saw this post by the Babylon Bee and it just made me laugh. Obviously, it's not real, but it said that Tim Waltz announces $8 billion grant to Somali company to investigate fraud. I hope they root it out. I really hope that they find it. Tim Waltz, good job. Good job with that one. All right. I just also want to just close this off and just say that nobody is saying to cancel childcare. Nobody is saying to cancel healthcare. Nobody's saying to cancel these services. It is about fraud. And if you are not picking up on that, this story is not for you. No, I'm kidding. But it is about fraud, you guys. And it's not about racism. It's not about pointing the finger. Yes, that is very possible that it could be the case for some people. But again, it looks bad on all of us if we cannot point out and say, hey, that person is corrupt. That person is committing fraud. That person is doing something that we have not approved them to be doing, especially, again, because these are people that are meant to serve us. This is our taxpayer money. We have every right to be upset about where that money is going for, especially if we are losing like half of our paycheck every single time that we are getting something. So that's where I'll leave that on that. But turning the page over, I wanted to talk about Sam Altman and OpenAI for today's video. And the reason why I wanted to bring up Sam Altman and OpenAI is because this week I'm trying to follow along a bit of a series and talk about OpenAI and what are the different damages that it is doing to our society. Now, I want to say that I actually come from like a tech background, so I'm very familiar with AI from that standpoint. Therefore, I have a lot of things, I have a lot of thoughts regarding this subject, but one of the things that really interested me about Sam Altman as I was tracing back his history has been the way that he has seemed to become a chameleon in various different environments. And that's really like the way that he has positioned himself to the public, the way that he's positioned OpenAI as this non-profit agency, which not many people actually are familiar with that. A lot of people obviously just use OpenAI as the chat function. A lot of like regular people are just like using it to like do their job and like different activities and stuff like that, which is totally fine and normal. But a lot of people don't know that it actually started as an nonprofit company. So we're going to get into a little bit about that and how I personally believe that there was a lot of intentional manipulation of the public. I also don't want to pathologize Sam Altman, but it is giving pathology, okay? It is giving psychopathy. So we're going to get into all of that in today's episode. But let's go ahead and just start talking about where Sam Altman got his start. So for many people that do not know, Sam Altman got his start at a company called Looped. That company is very similar to like Find My, which a lot of people use on their iPhone to find like where their friends are local to them. But let's go ahead and watch this video from More Perfect Union, and they'll kind of explain to you the background on Looped and Sam Altman.
Altman's first big deal was selling his first company, Looped, a service for locating your friends. That's something that inherently needs lots of users to work, or else you're just locating yourself.
The operative idea seems to be ubiquity. I mean, get it out there in more ways than you can possibly imagine.
And make it available to everybody.
But the whole time, Looped refused to say how many users they had. Altman just insisted there were, quote, way more users than any other similar service. It turns out, though, that towards the end, Looped only had 500 users. When Reuters reported this, Altman insisted it was 100 times more than that, and that he'd provide evidence. He never did. Just trust me, bro. Looped sold to the Green Dot Corporation, who shut it down immediately and never used any of the tech. Green Dot investors allege it was a dirty deal done to enrich Sequoia Capital, a VC firm with a stake in Looped, and 2 board members at Green Dot who helped approve the deal. Altman left Green Dot as soon as he was legally able, walking away with millions for building an app that no longer existed in any form. And luckily for Altman, someone saw something in him. Peter Thiel. Thiel, who once said that Altman should be treated as, quote, more of a messiah figure, gave Altman millions to start his own VC firm, Hydrazine Capital. And that's not all the capital Altman controlled. He was also hired as president of Y Combinator, or YC, an influential venture capital firm and startup incubator, where
Sam Altman and Peter Thiel, I cannot deal with these Silicon Valley twinks, okay? But basically, as you guys heard there, Loop was sold as basically this this BS POS, basically, that had very little users. It had 500 people using the platform when they actually found it, and it was not a successful company. It was not a thriving product. Pretty much Sam Altman sold it, as you guys hear from that video, just so that he can make a profit off of it and then get his next step in. So basically, after Loop, as you guys heard from the video, he connected with Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel helped him to start his first VC, which was Hydrazine Capital. And then later, a couple of years after that, he then became the president of Y Combinator, also performed by Peter Thiel, and then OpenAI CEO, also elected by Peter Thiel. So basically, after he sold Loop, he was then able to just make his way up the ladder due to that very important connection with this Peter Thiel, which we are also going to be getting into Peter Thiel and all the various different businesses that he is involved in. But just to talk a little bit more about OpenAI and their history. So OpenAI, like I shared, started out as a non-profit, which many people are not familiar with because nowadays you have to buy a subscription, you have to get your pro. If you want to get that data cleaned up, you got to get that pro version. Or if you just want to run a couple of different things on their past, like 3 different things. But I think that the important thing to note about its nonprofit start is the reason that it started off as a nonprofit was because they wanted to attract people to their organization. They want to attract talent basically to their organization. But we'll go ahead and talk about that in just a second. I want to just show you guys this article by Fortune, which talks about this reconstruction. Basically that Microsoft was able to purchase 27% stake in OpenAI. But here's an excerpt from that article, which says, as part of the deal, early investor Microsoft will get 27% stake in OpenAI worth $135 billion. The tech giant will also retain access to OpenAI's technology through 2032, including any models that reach the milestone of artificial general intelligence, something that will now be verified by an independent expert panel. The company's stock rose on the news, with shares up to 2% on Tuesday, pushing its market valuation back to the $4 trillion mark again. So again, this is not necessarily the non-profit entity that Sam Altman originally pitched, because as part of those original pitches that Sam gave to the media, to investors, it was a very mission-driven company. And part of that mission was to ensure that AI would be used for like the benefit of humanity. And it seems as though the benefit of humanity is really just the benefit of stakeholders, no matter really how you're turning it. But let's go ahead and take a look at what OpenAI said about their own restructuring in this recent post. They said that the OpenAI was founded as a nonprofit and is today overseen and controlled by that nonprofit. Going forward, it will continue to be overseen and controlled by that nonprofit. It then goes ahead and talks about kind of like what the new structuring process is. So like it turned like the for-profit side turned to like a PBC. And you guys can read more about that on the OpenAI website to just see what are those changes. But again, the OpenAI portion that remains managed by the nonprofit is probably not doing too well in terms of those nonprofit members are most likely no longer worried about the nonprofit sector. And if this is not if this is not evident, obviously in the recent news by OpenAI, the board of OpenAI was completely restructured in 2023 when Sam Altman was being pushed out actually by the board for misusage of or ethics around AI and other issues regarding like what he had promised or how he had pitched the company and like what the company ended up being, which I think is related somewhat to like this mission statement and that original board of trustees. But thanks to Sequoia Capital, which you guys saw in that video, that was being that used that Loop being sold venture, they helped Sam Altman basically get back into becoming the CEO of OpenAI. Apparently, according to like this little tidbit that happened, actually, one thing that surprised me, I didn't look fully into it, but there were like 700 something employees at the company, and almost all of those employees also like put their name in to resign when Sam Altman was being like ousted as the CEO of OpenAI. And I'm like, did that many people actually like this guy? Because I was like, I don't know if I'm putting my resignation letter in. If Sam Altman was my boss, I think I'd be one of those people that hold it tight to my chest. But I found it a little bit interesting. What I also found interesting too was that one of the issues by the board of trust, the board of OpenAI, was that they were saying that Sam Altman coerced a lot of employees to just do what he wanted to do. So it's like he could theoretically have done that there, but we do not know. Maybe the employees really, really loved Sam Altman. But I think one person that has helped me contextualize why OpenAI even started as a nonprofit is Karen Howe. She released recently a book, which is The Empire of AI, and she's a journalist from the US. She basically talks about, she did extensive research for this book, talking about AI, talking about Sam Altman, talking about the empire of AI. And obviously like the OpenAI, like his history throughout like his various different businesses. And she very much outlines that the reason why OpenAI started as this nonprofit, again, is because it wanted to attract people to come work for them. Because it could not be a big player if it did not have the funds to do so. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Karen Howe says about these origins.
Google is now Alphabet. Maybe 2015 is maybe the world's most valuable company. I don't know. It's certainly up there. And this is a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So how are they going to achieve AGI before Google?
So initially, the bottleneck that they saw was talent. Like,
right.
Google has this monopoly in talent. We need to chip away at that monopoly and get some of those Google researchers to come to us and also start acquiring PhD students that are just coming out of uni. And because of that, I have come to speculate, this is not based on any documents that I read or anything, I've come to speculate that part of the reason why they started as a nonprofit in the first place is because it was a great recruitment tool for getting at that bottleneck. They could not compete on salaries with Google, but they could compete on a sense of mission. And in fact, when Altman was recruiting the chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, who was the critical first acquisition of talent that then led to many other scientists being really interested in working for OpenAI, he appealed to Sutskever's sense of purpose. Like, do you want a big salary and just to work for a for-profit company? Or do you want to take a pay cut and do something big with your life? And it was actually that reason that Sutskever said, you know what, you're right. I do want to work for a nonprofit.
Wow.
And Sam Altman was the person that was infamously taking a very minimal salary. Apparently, he was taking only $76,000 annually as the CEO of OpenAI because at the time he positioned himself as somebody who wanted to pay everybody a fair wage, and he did not want there to be this like giant disparity in wealth between him and his coworker. I'm sorry, his coworkers and his employees. But Sam Altman, I just want you to know that he is a billionaire. Okay, he does not make money off OpenAI, but he makes money off various other personal investments because Sam Altman, his history has solely been in VC. His background has been in business, in tech, in all of those different areas. So his intention has never necessarily been a nonprofit. His intention has always been about investments, reaping on those investments, and so forth and so forth. So let's go ahead and just read OpenAI's initial mission statement. Okay, this is from the OpenAI website, and it says, and you can actually still find this. This was published in 2015. OpenAI is a nonprofit artificial intelligence research company. Our goal is to advance digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. Now, the lies, but let's go ahead and keep reading in this same article. We're hoping to grow OpenAI into such an institution. As a nonprofit, our aim is to build value for everyone rather than shareholders. Researchers will be strongly encouraged to publish their work, whether as papers, blog posts, or code, or patents, if any, will be shared with the world. We'll freely collaborate with others across institutions and expected to work with companies to research and deploy new technology. So OpenAI at its start as a nonprofit was meant to be a research institution. That's why they got the scientists that was mentioned by Karen Howe. That's why they got other employees and other talent that were interested in the science behind OpenAI. So they had the best and the brightest minds working for the company at the beginning, and still probably like working at the company to this day. But their goal really was to be able to share that research. Basically, one of their goals too, and one of the things that they had shared was that if there's another company that arises that is doing AI better than them, as a research institution, they were willing to basically join forces with that other institution to be able to improve AI for, like I said, all of humanity. But it does not seem like that is the case, or that is not the vibe that I am getting from the current OpenAI initiative, especially as they're building new data centers, as they are doing like billion-dollar deals with NVIDIA for the chips for the data centers and all of that. And they're trying to grow their business ultimately. They want AI, or they want the OpenAI software to be used across the board by everyone to basically replace a key player like Google, which I'm not saying we shouldn't or shouldn't replace it, but that is what their vision is. Their vision for OpenAI has always been about growth. It's always been about ensuring that the company would be able to actually pay back those initial investors, or really just pay back Sam Altman and his group of friends, I guess. But switching gears to a little bit of a darker note, this is where I am like, okay, I gotta pathologize Sam Altman, but also we need this investigated. And I am hoping that this will not be buried under, but there was a lawsuit that was put out by Annie Altman. And this lawsuit outlined years of sexual abuse at the hands of Sam Altman, allegedly when they were children. So this is a family photo of Sam Altman. This is his sister Annie. Well, obviously when they were still in communication. They're no longer in communication, I think, since 2021 or for like the past couple of years. And these are the two brothers, Max and Jack. And apparently these two brothers also work for VC and are in tech. So let's go ahead and just put that photo up one more time, just so we can take a look at that. So those two brothers are part of the tech. I think one of the brothers, Jack, had actually opened up. He started his own company. So all of this, like all the, I guess the brothers in the family are known like in the VC/tech world as these kind of like tycoons or as like this like very powerful family in that space. But yeah, just to give you a little bit of a background on this lawsuit that was filed by Annie Altman, again, the sister of Sam Altman. It was filed on January 6th. I believe it was filed of this year in 2025, but maybe we can verify that. But it was filed in the U.S. District Court in the Eastern District of Missouri. And basically it alleges that the abuse with Sam Altman started when Sam Altman was just when he was 12 years old and when Annie was just 3 years old. So I'm going to go ahead and read from the lawsuit that we have currently pulled up here. And it basically says here that starting from point 4, or well, point 3, we get their biological siblings. Point 4, it says, all the events and wrongful acts giving rise to plaintiff's claims herein occurred at the party's family home located at whatever between approximately 1997 through 2006. Okay, so this is a multi-year allegation of sexual abuse. Then it says number 5, in approximately 1997, plaintiff Ann Altman was 3 years old and residing at the family home with defendant Sam Altman. Beginning at or about that time, defendant Sam Altman forced plaintiff to touch his blank and perform oral penetration on him. Sam Altman was 12 years old at the time. Now, I just blocked it out there because I didn't want to get demonetized by YouTube if that ever happens for this video. But you guys can read the lawsuit or that initial complaint. It's not too long, but it details like really, really horrific abuse of 2 siblings and this sibling that was only 3 years old. Now, the unfortunate and sad thing about this, and something that is actually very common in these kind of like narcissistic or families that are run by like kind of like or controlled by like narcissistic personality types, like Sam Altman allegedly, in my opinion, is that the families band together basically, and like they scapegoat this individual or this person that clearly is hurting, clearly has pain on them, and instead of actually hearing them out or supporting them, the family then chooses, because obviously Sam Altman is the breadwinner for the family, well, in my opinion, and they all file a joint statement, the mother, the brothers, and Sam Altman. Now, I'm not going to read the entire statement. You guys are more than welcome to pause the screen and read through it. But just to give you kind of a quick notes version of this, they're basically stating that in the statement that they help her pay for all of her bills, her medical expenses, that Annie has had a history of mental health issues. Therefore, like this is coming out of nowhere, and that she's claiming that they've shadow banned her from GPT, from Twitter, ChatGPT. They've hacked her Twitter, which, by the way, most likely Sam Altman has all the powers to be able to do something like that. So it doesn't seem that far-fetched. And then he's like, but the worst allegation that she said that she was abused by Sam as a child, and that the claims are so dramatic, and then she said that she's been abused by other people. She might have been abused by other people, okay? And she might have been abused by someone like Sam Altman, because as I have done more research on Sam Altman, I'm like, this guy literally is just saying what people want to hear at the time that they want to hear. And even in that same interview that I shared with Karen Howe, if you watch the full thing, basically she talks about how a lot of the employees that she interviewed for her book stated that when they were done with the conversation with Sam Altman, they usually did not walk away knowing what he actually thought. It seemed like he would just tell them what they wanted to hear. Now, to me, that is reeking, okay? That is reeking of some kind of pathology, and I'm not a doctor, so you will have to take that up with your healthcare insurance, all right, Sam? But the crazy thing about this also too is that there was this note. Well, there's obviously when you are suing someone, you have to say like, hey, this is how much I'm suing you for. But basically, so Annie is suing for $75,000 of like minimal damages. So I'm going to read directly from the lawsuit. It says, wherefore plaintiff Ann, I call her Annie, that's what her name was. I see her name's Ann right here. Ann Altman requests that judgment be entered on her behalf against defendant Samuel Altman for actual damages in a sum in excess of $75,000 for punitive damages and for costs of suit. So basically, this means that Annie Altman is basically suing for Annie Altman is suing for the lowest tier in order to actually open up the suit. But she's basically saying in the suit that like once that the actual damages have been evaluated, there'll be a period of evaluating those, then it could be more than $75,000. So I don't necessarily view her as trying to take advantage, but I also just want to be clear that she's not just asking for $75. She's saying that minimum $75 to be able to submit this lawsuit, and then anything in excess of that once those additional damages are evaluated, okay? But this is a comment back from Sam Altman in that same actually Twitter thread where he shared that initial statement. So Lucy Guo shared, I respect you tons, but let's be real, $75K is not a money grab, especially for you. It raises more questions than it addresses. And then Sam Altman responds in this same post. He says that, in the same thread, in excess of $75,000 is something required for this court, I believe. In case there's any doubt about the goal here is something Annie's lawyer wrote to my lawyer. Significantly, given our client's tort claims involve sexual assault and sexual battery, we are allowed to seek punitive damages in this case under Missouri law. This means we will be allowed to seek discovery on Sam's network and present Sam Altman's network to the jury for consideration on a punitive damages award. It is not often where we have a case involving childhood sexual abuse spanning many years of rape and incest where the individual defendant has the ability to pay a 9-figure punitive damages verdict. That is a very real possibility here. Most sexual abuse cases take 2 years on average to litigate. I would expect, based on my research, that Mr. Altman net worth may exceed $1 billion by the time we go to trial if it hasn't already. So basically the lawyer's saying, hey, Sam Altman actually is worth a lot of money, so let's see if, we're gonna have to assess how much money he makes in order to then assess, the damages in relation to that income. Now, I don't get the vibe that Annie's going for the money, okay? This is her Instagram. I just get very, hippy-dippy vibes from her. She's very hippie granola. She's kind of like that girl that has, she literally has a podcast. She has a podcast that's listed here as the Human, let me see, the Humani, and then she has a couple of other accounts that she's sharing here. So this is a funds distribution account. This is money, quote from the bio, his money being used as a made-up tool to hoard tangible basic resources is a human rights violation. So I'm like, I don't think this girl is trying to go for the $1 billion fund, even though I'm sure she was supported by the family. I'm sure those things are true. I'm sure Sam did support his family, did give her house, did give her all these things that he's saying that he did. But it could also be very true what she is also claiming for herself. There's another account that she's sharing here on her bio, which is Humans Humaning. So just to give you kind of a vibe of Annie, she's kind of this is the kind of gal that she's at least posing to be, but I don't know. We've been obviously manipulated allegedly and been convinced otherwise by Sam Altman. So I'm just not in the neighborhood to fully trust the Altman family, but I'm like, Annie, she's seeming to me like this is legit. Anyways, before we jump back in, just a quick thank you for you guys that are watching and supporting our show. However you're tuning in, if you're watching, if you're listening, if you're catching this later, it genuinely means a lot to us that you're supporting our show. So if you would like to help us grow, make sure that you're following us on our social media handles that we're sharing with you guys on the screen if you guys are watching this. But if you're not, feel free just to go into my bio and find those. All right, let's get back into it. Now, I want to shift gears and talk about a case that was related to Sam Altman, that was related to OpenAI. And I just want to start off and say that I am not accusing Sam Altman of doing this, but I think that something weird is 1000% going on. And Sam Altman's response does not inspire any confidence that he is not potentially part of this, maybe, potentially, allegedly. Anyways, if you guys do not recall, there was a case that happened last year, actually 2024. Well, now it's going to be in 2 years, 2024, which was Suchir Balaji, who was a former OpenAI employee. For actually 4 years, he worked with Sam Altman, and he was part of that initial group of employees that helped actually build ChatGPT. But unfortunately, Suchir Balaji was found dead in his home on November 26, 2024. I believe he actually had passed, or he actually died a couple of days before that, but there was kind of a process to get into his apartment because he was already an adult, and there's a procedure for getting into that with the police, with the property management company, all that stuff. But the San Francisco authorities ruled his death a suicide, and that has been a point of contention between the family for basically since that suicide was ruled. Let's go ahead and just take a look at how the mom talks about a little bit about Suchir Balaji, just so we can kind of get a picture of who this guy is.
Suchir was a prodigy. From birth, we knew he was gifted. And for living, he studied his bachelor's in computer science from UC Berkeley, the top school. He had 4.0 GPA throughout. As soon as he graduated, he started working in OpenAI as a researcher, AI researcher. His first project was WebGPT, for which a fresh graduate, he took the lead role. And that WebGPT turned out into be ChatGPT, an application.
Yes. Yeah, so Suchir Balaji is part of that group of very intellectual individuals that joined OpenAI early on to help build out the technology for its mission-driven nonprofit purpose. But obviously, quickly, Suchir Balaji is one of those people who does not end up enjoying his. I mean, he works there for 4 years, but based off information that I have just seen, and this is just hearsay, Suchir Balaji did not have a good working relationship with Sam Altman. In fact, according to these people, again, this could just be hearsay, he actually despised Sam Altman and like really disliked working there towards the end of his time there. But the reason why he was a whistleblower or like this association, oh, I'm sorry, I don't think I actually even mentioned that. For those of you guys who do not know, Suchir Balaji was actually listed as a whistleblower for OpenAI when he left the company. And the reason that happened was because Suchir Balaji was trying to raise concerns regarding copyright issues that OpenAI was infringing upon, in his opinion. He actually put out a blog post on his website. And this is not his website, but this is a New York Times article. And on that website, he basically talks about the fair use of OpenAI. And just to kind of share a little bit about that, I'm not sure if we have any clips or images from it, but he's basically sharing that if you guys are not familiar with the platform Stack Overflow, it's a common platform that's used by like developers or people who have like technical questions, and they submit those questions, and then like other peers usually respond. I mean, it's like the classic like Quora or like Yahoo Answers. I think that's what it used to be called. But it used to operate this way. And so OpenAI, if you guys are not familiar with how AI works or those training model works, they take large quantities of data and they basically scrape the internet for that information. That's the reason why there was even that we like flashed on the screen. There was that New York Times post, because the New York Times actually was suing OpenAI regarding the copyright issues. And Suchir Balaji was actually listed as one of the individuals that was part of that lawsuit and was going to testify against OpenAI regarding their copyright infringement. But yeah, on his own personal blog and on his own website, he shared, he only had one posting, and it was basically that OpenAI was infringing on that copyright material, and they were taking information from sources like Stack Overflow, and what they were regurgitating back, one, it seemed as though the data was actually inaccurate based on what was being provided. And he also noted that there was also issues with like declines in traffic and submissions to Stack Overflow, which is what the core of OpenAI is being trained off of. And he felt like this was something that was not ethical, because how could OpenAI both benefit from that material to train its own models and then compete with a company like Stack Overflow and basically rule them out? So it's like you're going to compete and then also have inaccurate data. And also, Suchir Balaji also outlined in his blog post, which, by the way, his website is called suchir.net. Very easy to search up if you guys wanted to, and read through like those things. It's a lot of more formulaic stuff. But anyways, it talks about basically how a lot of the times the AI models will regurgitate information. So the purpose of AI, as you guys are probably familiar with using it, is like it's supposed to give you novel responses, meaning that it's supposed to give you new stuff. Like if I'm like, hey, give me like a blog post about X, Y, and Z, it's supposed to be a brand new blog. Like no one's ever supposed to have seen this blog post. But what sometimes happens with this trained data is that it ends up, after it's prompted like various different times, it ends up regurgitating that information. So sometimes that copyrighted material ends up being regurgitated directly back. So it's like, that's why that is an infringement, because it's not exactly being like regurgitated in a novel way. It's just basically being like shot back out. So that was the origin of like that lawsuit with the New York Times. Like I was saying, they were basically claiming that a lot of the material that was used by OpenAI was their material, and that they also had given a preference towards the New York Times posting. And New York Times like, hey, like we are independent journalists, or not independent, we're journalists and we value our craft, and like you guys can't just take like that information. That's kind of like the core of like what that article is. But I want you guys to watch this video by Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson ends up interviewing the mother of Suchir Balaji. And like I shared with you guys, the parents do not believe that this is a suicide. There seems to be a lot of inconsistencies with the story that is being presented by the coroner's office of San Francisco. But I'm going to let you guys take a look at what the mother says regarding why this is a questionable suicide.
The official explanation is your son shot himself once in the head and the bullet entered the brainstem and extinguished life immediately.
Can I say something there?
Yes.
It didn't touch his brainstem at all.
Oh.
It didn't even touch his brain, and the angle is downwards.
Yes. Well, I'm saying the official explanation is he shot himself once in the head, he died.
Yes.
But these photographs show that that's not at all what happened, because there's blood all over the apartment. There's blood on the door, on the floor, in the bathroom. There's blood everywhere. So that right there, just employing common sense, tells you that that the person from whom that blood came, your son, presumably, did not have a fatal brain injury, at least when he was bleeding. I mean, something was going on in the apartment,
yes.
Right? The second thing that jumps out is that there is a tuft of hair that's
yes.
not hair. It's from a wig.
It's from a wig. And there's a clip scene.
It's okay. So tell us what that is for people who don't know. It's a part of a clip-in wig.
Like there's some kind of plastic band or something that fits the wig on the head. We can see that coming out behind the door.
Yes.
And that's obvious evidence that no crime scene investigators or police can miss. They just ignored everything that showed murder and they picked up everything that showed a cover-up suicide.
Yeah, so the other important thing to mention regarding the suicide verdict is that at this point, it does seem as though there have been various different autopsies that have been performed by San Francisco autopsy, the autopsies in San Francisco, and they continue to rule it a suicide, but they don't really provide as like, hey, this does not seem right to me. Hey, like, why is there blood in two different rooms? Why is there a random wig piece there? Unless RuPaul was visiting the apartment the day before. But why is there a random wig piece that's just like on the floor and nobody thought to like verify and see? According to the family, they hired their own private investigator and independent and conducted their own independent autopsy. And when they did a test on like the wig sample, like it did not find a match to Suchir Balaji. So this wig does belong at least to somebody else. And the government or the local police department should be doing their due diligence, but they are not doing that. And the other thing that's very odd is like at the end of this interview, apparently Tucker Carlson has a connection in like local government in San Francisco. So he actually raised this personally to somebody that he knew, and nothing was gone from it. He said, and he even said in this interview, this is somebody who normally would try to rule out something like this. And if it looked like it was not a suicide, this is the kind of person that would be on this side to investigate this, but they did not seem to be interested in investigating this. Also, I want to point out to you by the private autopsy, an important detail is the angle of the gun position. So according to the autopsy, the independent autopsy that was done by the parent, the gun was angled at like a slight degree. I don't know the exact degree, but it was like a slight degree downward, which doesn't make sense because based off of the gun type, you would have to be holding the gun pretty far away from your head in order to be able to hit that specific angle. So it seemed from the independent autopsy that it was more of an execution style murder. And like Tucker Carlson is mentioning in that video, there is blood in different parts of different rooms. So how could you shoot yourself with a fatal brain injury where it hits your brainstem, and then you're gonna go shoot yourself again in another room, or you're gonna walk over to the other room? It does not make sense. Okay. Now, I'm not necessarily positing the idea that Sam Altman or OpenAI is like behind this, but it seems odd just the timing of everything, okay? Because we have obviously Suchir Balaji is part of that New York Times article. He's then being named as a whistleblower in the New York Times lawsuit. And then obviously he's leaving the company and he is putting out like an article on his public blog. So there's more and more attention being drawn to Suchir Balaji, the issues with OpenAI, and he's worked at the company. So if the company is being sued and Suchir Balaji has inside information about that company, how they run their practices, of course they're going to lose that lawsuit. Well, in my opinion, they would lose that lawsuit by OpenAI unless there are obviously outside influences, which in this case could be the case. The other thing that's very odd about this is that apparently the wires were cut from like the security camera footage. and he had just ordered food, and like he spoke with his parents daily. He had just come back from a trip with his friends like the day of. It was like, yes, maybe this person could be suicidal, but it does seem more like a murder. And again, I'm not saying that Sam Altman is behind that or OpenAI is behind that. I just think the timing is odd. But I do want to say that it does not help Sam Altman's, like, his track history really, based on what we've talked about. It seems more and more likely to me like this could be possible. So I'm just saying it could be possible. But let's go ahead and take a look at this interview by Tucker Carlson and Sam Altman. And Sam Altman is asked basically about this case. Let's see what he thinks.
You think he committed suicide?
I really do.
Have you looked?
This was like a friend of mine. This is like a guy that, and not a close friend, but this is someone that worked at OpenAI for a very long time. I was really shaken by this tragedy. I spent a lot of time trying to, read everything I could, as I'm sure you and others did too, about what happened. It looks like a suicide to me.
Why does it look like a suicide?
It was a gun he had purchased. It was this is like gruesome to talk about, but I read the whole medical record. Does it not look like one to you?
No, he was definitely murdered, I think.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like it's a murder, but Sam Altman is not interested in really investigating, prying further, or talking to the family. He said that the family, he tried to talk to the mother, but she did not want to talk. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not, because in that Tucker Carlson interview, the mother wanted like nothing more than to have this addressed or to have attention on this. So I don't know if the mother would really not want to talk, or Sam is just saying that because like we have covered in this video, Sam Altman might as well just be saying whatever he wants to say, just to say it to whoever he wants to say it to. So I don't know. I can't take any of this seriously, but I do think that it is odd, his response, because he's like, yeah, I definitely think it's a suicide. Like, why don't you think that it's a suicide? Like, what do you think, Tucker? What do you think? He keeps flipping the question around because he does not want to answer the question. And that is odd to me because I'm like, anybody with 2 brain cells could answer the question. But Sam Altman, like I said about JD Vance, he's just not that smart of a guy. I don't think, okay? Anyways, the other thing that I think is so odd about this interview is that Sam Altman refers to Suchir Balaji as a friend. He's like, no, that's a friend of mine. I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's so gruesome. Suchir Balaji allegedly did not like you, Sam Altman. So I don't think that he's not considering you to be a friend in that aspect. And it reminds me a lot about like the Charlie Kirk case, where after his death, people are claiming friendship like just for their own benefit or just to kind of like save themselves from whatever they want to save themselves. And yeah, I just don't fully trust it. And I really hope that Ann Altman is able to move forward with her case, because a lot of times what happens with these big cases is like you basically just get like put in debt to not go to court with somebody because they don't want those things to be addressed or like that. But hopefully Annie Altman will move forward with her case, and there will be some justice in that aspect if those claims turn out to be true. The other thing too is that a lot of people say like there isn't really an incentive for silencing Suchir Balaji, and while I can understand that to be true, I also think that Suchir Balaji was being named actively in a court case, and he was going to be testifying in that case. And that case did not. He did not obviously end up testifying in that case, but to me that does sound like some kind of incentive to silence him. Especially if he is a former employee, he has inside knowledge, he's able to speak on a lot of details regarding like those copyright claims that the New York Times is trying to put on Sam. But we will just see what happens. But what is happening now basically with the family, the latest that I've seen from them is that they have claimed a wrongful death lawsuit, and that was filed in September 2025 against the apartment complex, actually. So they believe that the apartment complex had some kind of hand in messing up with the investigation, that apparently like they blocked the mom from entering the apartment even though she was labeled as like the next of kin. Like they didn't want to turn over the apartment keys to her. The police blocked first responders from entering the apartment, which always screams of a cover-up, because I'm like, why are these random police people here that no one has ever seen? And then the property manager also too was fired directly after this case, which I was like, it could be something, could not be something. I was like, the person, they could have actually been fired due to this case because it was such a high profile thing. And maybe like they didn't like react to it like by the books how the company wanted them to. So I don't put too much weight on that. But the family also says too that the timestamps from what was being provided by the property management company was not matching with what they actually had of Suchir's phone record. So for example, like the property management company gave a timestamp or a video of Suchir entering like his apartment after he got like an order from Uber Eats, and it was like timestamped at like 7:30, but like Suchir Balaji has a phone record like with his father at that same time, like 7:12, 7:30, talking on the phone. So it's like he had to be on the phone during the time that like the video was provided, but the video didn't show that. So they also believe that perhaps the videos were manipulated, and also that they had requested like a week's long. The court requested a week's long worth of videotapes, but they only provided 2 days. Again, I don't put too much weight on that because, girl, with all this camera equipment, a lot of times it's very janky. So I'm like, they probably only had 2 days to give over, to be honest with you. But I don't know. I'm curious to see like where this goes. I mean, the family does think that this is kind of wrapped in various circles, and I think honestly, sometimes with these cases, it's like something really bad could happen, and it's so bad that like we can't even believe that there's all these intricacies. But sometimes there could be like, sometimes there is like an actual interest in making sure that this company grows. I mean, this company is the labor of various different manipulation tactics and manipulators. So it's like they are not going to see this thing die that easily. All right. Anyways, if you guys have that, well, that is it actually for today's episode. Suchir Balaji, Sam Altman, and everything. But if you guys have any more stories, information, or tips to share with us, please share that with us at our tips box at therealkevinm.info@gmail.com. Of course, we have our stories, but we always love to hear from you guys what you guys want to see more from us. So please let us know. And of course, that helps us grow our podcast. But thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode. If you would like to support us, again, please like, subscribe, follow, share this video with anybody that you think would enjoy this episode. New videos of ours stream weekly on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, and also on YouTube, of course. But we'll see you next time, and take care, you guys. Happy New Year's. Happy 2026, and I'll see you guys next year. Bye, everybody.